Hey guys, Darren Carr here, coach of Wise Ocean Pods, and welcome back to another episode of our round review series. On today's episode, we will be reviewing the final round of the early buys, being round 6, highlighting some of the important players that you should be considering for your side that performed well on the weekend. So let's get into it. So before I get into that, we'll just touch base on how my team performed this week. So I scored a 1765 this week, so really poor in my opinion. Probably about 50 points off par. I think par was about 18, 15 or something like that, or around that range. So 50 points really hurts the ranking for sure. So that led into a 29,357 round rank. So that's numbers I haven't seen in quite a long time. So even to start the season, I haven't seen that high. So that's really disappointing to see. And pushes me back to about just over 4K in their overall ranking. So it's still a fair way back and a lot of work to do. So pretty disappointing week overall. So let's have a quick look at some of the players that are probably the culprits here. Overall, I think it was just the case that I didn't have any really ceiling scores. Like I only had the one player over 120, a couple in the 110s, but nothing else really consider. Yeah. Couple in the hundreds as well, but yeah, just no massive scores. So really disappointing. Overall, I didn't think I was in too bad of a position, considering most of the rookies actually did okay with a couple 70s. Only had a few lower scores, which I did expect in the end, but in the end of the day, I had 3 people drop off, and yeah, that's all I can really say. Probably move into my +3 and -3, and +3 probably has to go to Sam Flanders this week, just as he came in for my side this week and was a high scoring player and looked really good. So really glad I jumped on him in the end after changing my trades. After that Sanders news came out on Thursday night. So, but we'll have a quick look at that afterwards. So yeah, really happy with Flanders. Glad I brought him in. If I didn't have traded him in, that could have hurt. But either way, I would have grabbed Zorko. So I think it was much for much likeless, really. But my -3 has to go into Robert Marshall. When you got a guy that's over $1 million and you've traded him in on a good run, he's your VC on the Thursday night, puts up a 62. That's where my weekend really hurt, and I knew I was in for a pretty rough one as soon as I saw that on the Thursday night. And following up, you see the likes of Grundy and Cherry put up both 120s and 140. You're talking 60 to 80 points just in this line alone, where even some people had both Cherry and Grundy running here. So yeah, that's where the massive point difference really was for me, unfortunately. And yeah, hopefully he can get a big bounce back this week against Soldo. But yeah, the damage is really done so far. So really disappointing, especially in a good matchup. And what hurt most of all was that he's actually played Tim English back into form. English obviously had a pretty big score, and people may look to jump on him at a pretty cheap price if he continues that way. So yeah, really disappointing overall, and yeah, really destroys all the factor of bringing him in the other week, especially with Grundy going 140 as well. So, but don't expect that every week. Just go to clicking through a few players here. So we saw that I looped Williams on, I think it was Saturday. He obviously did really poor and got subbed out of that game with a bit of a knock to the Achilles. Apparently that's the case. I don't think that's actually what happened, but yeah, I think more than likely he'll be fine. But yeah, looped him. Only scored 28, so I ended up just fielding Graham. So I ended up scoring some more points there, but in the long run, it didn't really matter as Graham also came off my scoring for this week. So what the scores that dropped off was Graham at least 50, Dempsey at 54, and then I had Fisher at 60, who was also really disappointing in what was an easy matchup, but North Melbourne just couldn't get their hands on the ball for this game, and they weren't really playing that chip game that they would usually do, probably thinking that this was a winnable game in their books, and yeah, really were trying to take the game on at every chance they could, so weren't willing to chip it around. But Sheasel did really well. Was happy with him, even though he did cop a little bit of attention. I wouldn't call it a tag, but yeah, definitely had McGuinness sort of running with him as sort of a direct opponent, keeping him accountable. So 106, if you captained him, you'd be happy with that. Captain scores was another nightmare to look into this week. As we saw, Marshall VC 62 was really disappointing. Wasn't taking that. So I went into Merritt, as I said, and yeah, luckily he scored a 103. And look, I wasn't super pleased with it after what it could have been, but yeah, I'll take a 103 in what was sort of a tough week where we saw a lot of people cop sort of, 80s, 90s, and low hundreds. So those that had a massive captain score this week really would have saw a big jump up. Probably leads into what my captains were for last week. So my top 5 captains was 1 Merritt, 2 Marshall, 3 Steele, 4 Dawson, and 5 Sarong. So overall, the average of those 5 was 102.8. So not too bad. Really, Dawson saved it there at number 4 at scoring that 155. Surprisingly enough, I didn't see Dawson in too many other captain calculations from most of those other guys. So really glad I had him in there. I was even telling my mates to captain him, and unfortunately they didn't listen to my advice, and they're kind of kicking themselves now. But in the long run, they still had a massive week, given that they had Dawson there, having, I think, the highest, no, not the highest score of the round, because they had Bailey Dale. But yeah, you got to be happy with 155 and really bounce back. So hopefully he can be a bit more consistent from here on out when Crouch comes back. But we'll come back into that a bit later. But yeah, this is sort of how the team went. Not very happy. It was sort of just a week of almost, in my opinion. Like, you had Sheasel, who had like 44 points at quarter time. You had Hayden Young, who was on for a big one as well. Lockie Whitfield was on, like, I think close to 70 at half time, so he was on for a big one, but was really quiet. Hayden Young was pretty much subbed out that entire entire fourth quarter, so he didn't play at all. So he would have definitely cracked a ton, but in the end, these guys are all highly owned anyway, so it wouldn't have made too much of a difference to my team. Merritt also had a massive first quarter, then really slowed and only scraped out that 100, so that was a little bit disappointing. A little bit of concern with him as well, given that he pushed forward a lot. I'm not sure what exactly his CBA is, but I think we can look at that a little bit later. Bont relied on 3 goals to get to his 110, so that's a bit of a worry as well, but hopefully he can improve. Butters, he was on 61 at quarter time, so he was on for a massive one before being really quiet, but still happy with his 117. Martin got there very late with this game. I think he was maybe on like a 38 at half time and really jumped up in that last quarter. So really happy there. Same with sort of Roberts. I don't think he was on track for too big either. So Heaney was on 40 odd at quarter time, and same with Flanders. So it was really just a week of almost for most of my players, where they've sort of had a big quarter but then weren't consistent enough to keep that up. But yeah, that's just the way of fantasy. Sometimes you got to love it and you got to hate it. So just one of those weeks to forget in my team for sure. Quickly looking at my trades for last week. So I did end up changing my trade. You would have seen in the comments of my last video that I did change it. So I ended up holding McKercher and trading out Sanders, given that Sanders was a sub, which sort of worked out in my favour a little bit because I was able to use that additional cash on his head to go to Flanders instead of Zorko, who was just probably a bit safer in my opinion. So really happy I picked him up, and Will Graham. So those trades really worked out, and trading these 2 out instead of McKercher really worked out because McKercher only ended up losing the 15k, so it saved 4k there. And yeah, we'll probably get into McKercher a little bit later, what we do with him. Still has a high break even, so yeah. But really happy with my trades. I'll definitely put that in the good trade book, in the good trade pamphlet, or what do you want to call it. So I don't think there's anyone else to really discuss here. Cash generation was a bit low this week, given that I had the 2 buy players, and Toby Pink's still sitting there as a red dot. Gone. was also not making any money, but we don't really worry about too much about there. But we shall move into the games, I guess. I don't think I needed to talk about anything else there. So let's start with the Thursday night game, St Kilda versus Western Bulldogs, which was a bit of a blowout than what most people sort of expected. Bulldogs really turning it on and looking to find some form. So we'll start going down the line here. So Windhager looked really good in that game. Better than Steele, honestly. Just really collecting the ball around the outside. Obviously, we know his tackling is always going to be there, but he just really showed that he can have a high disposal game. So he had a 105 and is possibly a trade-in target for you this week if you are looking for a player in that sort of range. I think he's like low 600k, maybe 630 or something like that. So definitely a potential if you don't have the money to trade up to those big dogs like myself this week. So definitely one to consider because he does still have that role for, you'd think, for probably at least the next probably 6 weeks until Brad Crouch is back. Hopefully he can even hold it down for even after that. But yeah, really good. Good time on ground. He's going to make a bit of coin as well. I think his break even's now down to 30 or 40 even. It would be nice if I can actually check it here, but I cannot. Moving on to Steele. I might as well talk about Brad Hill because he had another good game as well. Anyone that picked him up last week, he'd be pretty pleased with his cash generation. Yeah, it's definitely one for the brave. I personally couldn't do it, not even do it this week, because I think he's like 750k. It's a little bit expensive for this type of guy who could easily drop a 30 or a 50 next week. But I'm not really sure why he's scoring so consistently at the moment. I couldn't really identify too much of a role change. I think it's maybe they're just targeting him a bit more out of that defensive line, so they're chipping it to him rather than a Wangani Malira or something like that. So, which is why we're probably seeing Wangani Malira not having much of a high ceiling. So Wangani Malira. So I don't really say his name too many times, but just not trying to jump around too much. Had a really poor game, only 18 disposals, 5 marks. But not too much to worry there. It's just really been up and down all season. I think if you go to his scoring, it's been one up, down. You know, he was actually meant to have a big one this week and had a pretty poor one. So, still averaged a 92. So he's still above the price that you paid for him, I believe. Yeah, so he still made 9k, but he's got a tough one this week against Port Adelaide. So would I be moving off of him? Probably not. I think at this time of year, you're meant to be, upgrading those rookies that are really topping out in price. You know, we've got a Dempsey that's pretty close. You got a Flair, a Sanders. You got a Kerchief. You didn't move them off last week. You got a Roberts who's getting close. You got a Sharp that's getting there. Who else do we have? Probably wouldn't be moving off Reed just yet. He's still a bit of money to make. You got your Howes, you got your Campbells, you got Williams if you're looking to move off mid-price. Wouldn't be moving off these two boys yet, but there's so many of these other guys that can go before him that don't have that scoring potential that you'd be moving off first. Back onto the players. Bonner. No, did I talk about Steele? No, I didn't talk about Steele. Jack Steele had his first poor game of the season where he dropped below sort of that 110 area. So it was just due to, St Kilda being smashed on, unfortunately. Couldn't really get their hands on the ball. Still put up a respectable score, third highest in the team. So expect him to bounce back pretty quickly. His run is elite, so you're not looking to move him off of him at all. Just sort of stops his cash generation for those that had him for that. Riley Bonner put up another solid 83. Really pleased with him. I was hoping this game would be good for him, obviously, against the Western Bulldogs. They usually give up a fair few points to defenders, but wasn't really a huge scoring game for St Kilda. Only had the one person over 100. But yeah, really pleased with him. His break even is now 30. $73, so he's getting pretty close to his top price. I personally have other priorities in my team to move on before him, and I think he'll go pretty big this week, given it's his revenge game against Port Adelaide. So yeah, I'm holding him, and he does actually have a good fixture coming up after that one too. So could be a hold for a little while as well, in my opinion. Just other priorities in that. What is it? Garcia. I'll just call him Garcia. I don't remember his first name. Garcia was really good in his second game. Played the full game, so it was really pleasing to see. Is the rookie pickup for this week. So if you didn't trade him in last week and do that double downgrade, he is the one to grab this week. Which probably leads me into the whole double downgrade of last week. This is sort of the flag of doing a double downgrade, is that there's not always a rookie to pick up next week. So where a lot of people that double downgraded and grabbed a Garcia last week, who are they grabbing this week now? There's not a whole lot of people putting their hands up, really, besides maybe going for a risky jury or a biggie even, who put up lower scores this week but still have a nice break even that you could ride a bit of coin. But yeah, definitely no one massively putting their hand up compared to Garcia. But at the end of the day, you've got a good cash rise. He went up, I think, 50 or 60k, so you're happy with that. But he generally just looked really good, tackled everything he could see, had the team high tackles. I don't know what his CBA numbers were, but I noticed he was in the middle during some of the game. Yeah, 45%. So good roll, really happy with that, and he is the one to grab for sure if you don't have him. Oops. Sinclair's just washed now. Wouldn't be considering him, and if you had him, you've got to jump off. He just does not look the same, guys, what we've seen in the past, and I think other guys have gone past him. We spoke about Wangani Malira. We spoke a lot about Marshall. Really disappointing. Just absolutely got destroyed by English, unfortunately. And Darcy Wilson, if you still had him, he still put up a decent score for you with a 61. He's probably another one that you could look at to move on in the near future. I don't think his break-even would be too bad, maybe in the mid-30s, but yeah, one to look at moving on if if you're looking for a bit of an upgrade. But I think that's all we'll talk about for St Kilda. We'll move on to Western Bulldogs here. So we saw Bailey Dale come back after being subbed last week and absolutely go whack, scoring 160, 39 touches, 15 marks, 2 tackles, kicked the goal as well. He just looked everywhere in this game, and everything went through him, which was just ridiculous. So it gave me sort of reminded me a lot of the Sicily of last year, where he could just be that guy that they look for and they want him to be that main distributor off halfback. But it's probably a bit risky for me at this point. I don't know if I'd, especially because we don't need a lot of defenders at this point in time. I think we have a lot pretty set in our defensive ways at the moment, so I wouldn't be looking to trade him in. And yeah, but definitely want to monitor coming forth if that's his role gonna be, if his role's gonna stick like that. But just by looking at how highly everyone scored in that team, I wouldn't be, expecting it too much. This is just a game they all sort of got amongst about. So yeah, Adam Chulo just gets done again. I think, what is he actually going at? He's been going at a pretty good rate where he has scored some big scores. So yeah, now four tons in a row, some decent high numbers there, averaging nearly 110. So he has been going at a good rate. So only gone up to 6k for the entire year, so he hasn't been a great starting pick, but yeah, definitely been good in the last month for sure. Would I be going there? Probably not. That's why he hasn't made the watch list, just given the injury risk. I know we probably go on about that too much. You can only be as good as your last game, but it's always a flag with him. There's always a hamstring not too far away, so I don't think he'll last the entire season, and he probably will sit out some portion of the year. Jack McRae is probably another really interesting one this week, with a lot of people actually trading him in after it looked like his role was sort of a bit more consolidated, where he wasn't starting at the CBAs as much. Like his CBAs was only like think it was like around 30%. Yeah, 34%. So his role really didn't change too much, but he was playing a lot closer to the stoppages. So probably starting on that. I think he started on that half forward and then sort of roamed into the stoppage and helped around in there. So he was able to get his hands on the ball more. He's able to get those tackles, which he's seen, and even get on the outside and get a few marks as well. So that was really good. Kicked the goal. Yeah, scored the 129. So you got to be happy with that. He's now met his break even, so he's only going to go up. But there's really an interesting one this week to grab. This week, the only flag obviously is Treloar. When he comes in, does that role change again? I think Bevo said that his role is probably going to be a bit more consistent now that we've sort of found that mojo and they really looked good in this game. But yeah, we don't trust Bevo with anything, so I wouldn't be relying on that too much, but definitely is a good trade-in target this week if you're willing to take the risk. Definitely might be something I'm looking at for sure. He's in my my early trade so far. Tim English, I said, absolutely dominated Marshall everywhere. So, yeah, played him back into form. Saw the 128, and looked like the English of old. So, be an interesting one to keep an eye on there. Probably wouldn't be jumping on just yet because he still has a massive break even. But definitely could be one to look at in the near future if you are looking to upgrade your rucks at any point. But I think we've got a pretty... Yeah, most people are running a Cherry, a Grundy, or a Gorn, and I think all of them are great options at the moment. And it was really hard to split who you'd be trading out of those three. Bontempelli, as I said, scored the 110, but relied on 3 goals, so it was a bit of a concern. Dropped a bit of coin because he had that 140 break even, but he's got such a good run coming up. I'd be holding him for sure. Was getting a few more tackles, so he was putting the work in, but yeah, not the game of old, I would have thought. Moving on, not too many more people. Ed Richards, like he had a lot more CBAs as I showed in here. Where was he? Yeah, 76%. So he really took that Liberatore role, but yeah, don't expect that to continue with Liberatore coming back in. Only scored the 71 anyway, so it wasn't like he had a massive game. Garcia, no, not Garcia. What's his name? I can't even know how to say it. I can see it, but I can't know how to say it. He probably is on to move on as well. Scored the 65. Probably his break even is probably a little bit higher now, and is starting to max out in price. So he's probably one you can move on if you can get him up to someone you like, or do a downgrade with him. And Sanders obviously started as a sub, only came on, I think, midway through that third quarter, ended up on 22. So minimised the damage for owners because his break even was 50, but he still dropped the, I think it was 19k or something like that. So a little bit disappointing for those that held him and thinking he might come on a bit earlier, but yeah. Let's move on to the second game. Crows versus Essendon was a really good game overall. Crows got robbed, but that's okay. We don't care about that too much here. Fantasy is all we think about. Dawson absolutely killed it. 31 touches, 7 marks, 9 tackles. This is what we've seen from him all last year. Absolutely killed it. Even kicked the 2 goals. And yeah, big bounce back from last week after having a lower, I think it was in the mid 60 or something like that. So repaid the faith for the owners that did hold him. I know a few traded him out. I think it was around 2k or something like that. So yeah, again, it's just don't trade your primos. Him, I can understand why he did it, given the concerns with his role. But yeah, given that Crouch was out, I always thought he was going to bounce back and have a good week and be in that midfield. And we saw that he was back in there at a pretty good rate at 80%. So yeah, probably expect that to drop a little bit with Crouch coming back, just given that they look like they want to have these guys in there a little bit more. So probably expect that to drop down to like 60%. Hopefully won't drop as low as 50%, but yeah, I still think he's a hold at the end of the day, given that they have North next week, so it's a big watched out game. Saligo looked really good again. It's just he really lacks that sort of top end scoring where he had 31 touches, but there's a big difference between Dawson's 31 touches and a Saligo's 31 touches where there's 50 points difference there. It's just he doesn't have that sort of game where he gets tackles and gets marks. Gave a few silly free kicks away as well. Even kicked the goal. Is one to consider if you're shopping in that sort of range. Only has the midfield status, so is a bit of a trickier one. Definitely won't be top of his line, but could make some pretty good coin as his break even is pretty low. I think he's around 640k from memory. But I think if this role is going to stick, which it looks like he is, Crows have a really good run coming up as well, so it could be one to grab a hold of for sure. Laird's a bit washed at the moment. His role is so uncertain at the moment. He doesn't look good in it. Somehow still puts up decent 80s. What are these CBAs? 44. So, not great for Lady. If you had Lady, I'd probably be moving him on, unfortunately. Just is burning cash quite quickly now. And, doesn't look like he's going to be returning back to that midfield, unfortunately. And Isaac Rankin, very similar to Sligo, has that role, but really lacked getting that scoring potential. 62 is just really, really poor for someone who had 70% CBAs. So, probably wouldn't be looking to trade him in. If you did trade him in, it's probably another hold, given that they have North this week. And he could probably kick a bag or so. So, I would definitely be holding there. Moving on to Essendon. Caldwell was a standout for this game, where had 26 touches, 3 marks, and 10 tackles. So that was really pleasing to see. He's got a tackling game. We obviously know how fantasy friendly Caldwell can be. It's just whether he has that role in. It's so unfortunate that he's in this team where he is sort of that 4th or 5th in line for that CBAs, where you got Merritt, you got Parrish, you got Setterfield. You've even got a Hobbs that's waiting in the wings. You got a Durham. You got a Perkins. Like, there's so many guys that are just there waiting, and they just can't break in. Break in with the likes of Merritt and Parrish predominantly, and now they've brought in Setterfield last year, who they seem to be the main preference 3 there. But we'll have a quick look at their CBAs anyway, just because I'm also curious. Merritt dropped down to 60%, so that was a bit of a concern. I think that was more just because he was copying a bit of attention in this game. I think it was Berry and Saligo sort of running with him a little bit, just giving him a bit of attention. Because he did break away in that first quarter. Like I said, he was on 45 odd points in the first quarter, and then copped a lot of attention from then, but was able to get it done. But still, Caldwell was, 3rd in line. You'd expect Merritt to jump back up. What happens when, the likes of Setterfield comes back? You'd expect him to at least go back up to a 70%. Who drops off? I really don't understand. Obviously, you got Draper and Goldstein there. It's unfortunate because I do think he can be fantasy relevant, and that would be a good trade-in. But I'm personally looking for longer term solutions where he may only have another week in this nice role before going back to, dropping sort of 60s, because I think that's what he was sort of doing. Caldwell. He's also priced really heavily. Like, he's 757. What does that price him at? More than 80. It's not a good start. Say about 84-ish. 84, 83. So, do we actually see him going? Yeah, it's hard to say even going at 90. That's only 7 or 6 points upside, but it's so short term that it's not going to be sustainable, unfortunately. I think there's other people that are cheaper than him that have a more consolidated role, who are going to be a bit more consistent, and you don't have to worry about too much of their role. So Personally, I'm looking elsewhere, but he's definitely one that could give you some good scores over the next maybe week or two, while Perkins and Setterfield come back. Martin got there really late in this game. He was looking for maybe an 80, but jumped up quite late. Scored the 1 goal, 28 touches. Really happy with him. And now, if you look at... I don't know if I can do it here, actually. Anyway, he's the 4th highest scoring defender at this point in time, up to 911k. So he's now jumped young for me in that defensive line. Yeah, and he's just doing really well. Has been a really solid starting pick so far, and is really hard to get him if you did not start him or haven't traded him in at this point. So I'd probably be looking elsewhere for a bit of value. And like I said, Merritt didn't hit his break even, and luckily scored, a 103. Don't think there's too many others to really talk about in here. No one really made my watch list. Obviously, Dersma, the one that a lot of people should look to trade in last week, dropped to 50. As I sort of said, that wing role can be super volatile, and that would have hurt if you traded him in. And it's really stopped his cash generation. So that's a bad trade if you traded him in, unfortunately. And you may even have to look at moving him on pretty quickly. Moving on to Collingwood and Port Adelaide. Again, it was a bit of a washout game. Port Adelaide started really hot, but then Collingwood came back and won. Degoe did really well. Has had 2 really good games back to back now, and probably one that could be considered for midfield. It's just, yeah, we've seen it in the past where he's more of an impact player in my opinion. He doesn't really accumulate the ball too much. We don't really see him go over 30 disposals too often, but we don't need him to go have 30 disposals if he can put games together like this and constantly score closer to that 110. Because what is he at? Degoe 700k, so that's real cheap. What is his run like? He's got Essendon, so a really good one this week. Tougher one, really good one. Sort of tough, yeah. And that's the same for Dacos, because I know a lot of people are looking at Dacos as well, and it's not great, in my opinion. He's definitely got a few tougher games, but the difference between a Dacos and a Degoe is that Dacos is going to be top of his line, whereas a Degoe isn't even sort of in the top 20. So that's probably where I sort of draw the line a little bit. Whereas, yeah, if he may be good for a little while and make some decent cash, he's not a hold for the year, I wouldn't think, unless he can have an absolute breakout. Just spoke about Degoe. He's a great pickup this week, in my opinion. Does have Essendon this week, who could cop a bit of attention from Durham. We've seen Durham do a bit of attention to the likes of Bontempelli and who else this week? Rosie copped a bit of attention this week as well. So he has done a bit of work on those big midfielders in the past couple of weeks. So a bit of a flag there, but I still think at the end of the day, his price has now sort of bottomed out. I think his break even's only in the 120s, so he could definitely hit that this week and start going up. He's below 900k. You'd be more than happy to pay below 900k for a Dacos. Dropped nearly 100k for the season. So yeah, jump on is definitely one that we'd be looking to jump on pretty shortly. Even the week after, he could cop a bit of Hewitt attention. I've obviously seen him do a bit of work, and then he has the Eagles. So sort of at the moment, I've penciled him in to go at the Eagles game, even though Eagles haven't been the best matchup. I just think from there on, he's going to be top of his line. So I'll have to wait and see. Hopefully he can get some form back and really convince me he's going to be that guy again. Because so far he hasn't really shown, a massive points difference where he's at that priority to trade in. But more than likely he'll put that on my head this week and score a 140. So we'll have to wait and see. And that's really it from a Collingwood standpoint. There's just no one that is remotely fantasy relevant. Maybe I'll just mention this because he got defender status, but Cripps, we've seen him in the past be a top 6 defender, but he looks so far off the pace and not that guy anymore, so not even worth mentioning. Moving on to Port Adelaide, there's a few guys here that probably, obviously Butters and Rosie, but no one really else, in my opinion. Houston has been a pretty sneaky pick to start the season for anyone that had him. I think he's been pretty good. Definitely that main distributor down back and can definitely score pretty highly, as we've seen. So, but probably will not want to jump on. Butters, as I said, had a 61 first quarter and then really slowed after that. Still managed to get the 31 touches and 5 marks, 5 tackles. So that was pretty pleasing to see that he can score on other lines. 1 goal as well, which was pretty nice in that first quarter. I'll talk about Jace Bergwijn because this is what I sort of flagged in the preseason, that what he can do when he has this wing role. So he's gone 76 and now 90 playing full games. He's 2 full games for the season, so he's averaging about that 80 mark. So that's really good if you're shopping in that sort of window. I think his break even, it would be pretty damn low. I think it would be in the 20s. Bergwijn, he's below 500k, break even at 27. So 76 and 90 after he's played his first 2 full games. Would have been nice if this happened in the first opening round, round 1 when I was looking at picking him up, but unfortunately didn't really get there. Would have been a better pick than what's his name, Williams at this point, but hopefully he can be consistent. So definitely one you can pick up if you're looking in that sort of range. I think he'll be pretty good from here on out, and definitely make you some coin. And really only is Rosie had a pretty poor day with a 70. Obviously, said had a bit of attention from Durham. No, it's not Durham. What am I talking about? Who did? No, he didn't have attention in this game, did he? No. I think he had sort of a Tom Mitchell sort of matching up on him, sort of keeping him accountable. But just really had an off day. Couldn't really get those marks. Besides sort of after that quarter time, Port Adelaide just looked out of it. They just lost all momentum and the captains couldn't get them up. Besides that, I think it should be fair to mention that Sweet had scored a 60. Only played 59% game time before getting subbed out. So definitely showed that he can be fantasy friendly if given the chance. Just isn't quite there yet. So, but if you had him as your R3 just sort of sitting there, then he's getting closer. He's getting closer. And I think that's about it. Carlton and GWS. Sorry, I'm just taking my time today. I know a fair few of you like me to just take it slow. Don't care if it's an hour and a half, so we'll just go with the flow. Cripps bounced back with a big score, which we haven't seen in quite a few years now. I think it was 2 years ago where he was averaging close to 120 when he had his Brownlow. So it's good to see him have some pretty good form with 39 touches and 7 tackles. So that was really pleasing to see. Probably not an option in my opinion. Just, he's not, unless we see some consistency in that role and, him constantly do that. One thing I will say is that he has been freed up a lot by having the Koning as sort of that main ruck. And even they had the 2 rucks this week with Pitnet in him and De Koning in, where we've seen in the past where Cripps actually goes in the ruck and does a bit of ruck work. So with the 2 of them in, it actually benefits him a lot because he's able to get that ball and get it out rather than be that tap distributor. So definitely if you're keen, definitely one you can pick up for sure. Sam Walsh, 35 touches, only scraped to 100, so that was pretty disappointing for owners there. Only had the 4 tackles, no marks, which is pretty disappointing. One of the only players to really actually not have any marks, so which is really weird when you consider he's usually that sort of guy that leads up for those cheap marks. Just wasn't really getting marks out, unfortunately, but do expect him to improve. At the end of the day, he's going up in coin and making you some good money, so good one there. Kennedy is an interesting one. He went sort of in that half-back role once Williams went down with that sub, so has put back-to-back like 90 and 100 now, so his break-even's pretty low. Let's have a quick look at him. mid forward as well, so he could be thrown into the forward line. 91 and 100, so I personally wouldn't be doing it, even though it is, quite a good run that they have. And where am I looking here? It's just that uncertainty in his role. So low CBAs, bit of halfback. He's not too bad. He's 27. He actually looks older than what I would have thought he was, but yeah, it's probably just a bit of a risky play for me. Only had the 70% time on ground as well. Kicked a goal and that. Yeah, it's probably a no for me, unfortunately. But like I said, don't let me determine what you think. If you saw him with your eye, trust your gut and go with him. No one else really super relevant here, besides obviously Zach Williams, who unfortunately got subbed out with that knock to the Achilles, apparently. But more than likely, I think it's looking like he'll probably play this week. From all the news, I don't think he's been listed as an injury, so hopefully it was just a bit of a corky, and he'll be good to go this week if you have other priorities. Speaking about that, if you have other priorities, like you've got a McKercher, a Sanders, you've got the bullets of a Stewart who got concussed, or a Jackson who probably needs to go and losing cash. He's probably not on the priority list as such, because he probably will play, and he's more than likely could hit his break even, which is in the 70s now, so won't lose too much cash, I would say. I'd be moving on the other guys first. Moving on to GWS. Kelly had a blinder of a game, sort of kicked the 3 goals, but only 23 touches. Destroyed my multi because I had him for 25 touches, but we're not here to talk multis. Tom Green scraped to 100, which is, as an owner, you'd be pretty happy with that, but in the end of the day, he's got a massive break even to 159, so he is losing cash at a massive rate of knots at the moment, so you wouldn't be too happy. But again, this is a tougher matchup, so you're happy that he got the 3 figures. Lockie Whitfield got the 93, was a little bit disappointing, really slowed in that last sort of quarter. I think he was definitely on track to hit over that ton, just, really slowed, so not much to worry about there. Had the role, just a poorer game against a tougher opponent. An interesting thing about this game is that Himmelberg has been suspended, and I think it's Toby Green that got suspended. There's another one person that got suspended as well, so could be a few shuffles in the team. So big watch on their team announcement later this week. Cadman scored another a big score as well for him, so he's still going up for cash. Probably one that he could look to move on as well. His cash generation is drying up. Sorry, I'm just going to grab a drink. And Harvey Thomas put up a respectable 45 and kept his cash generation going. So he's creeping up to 400k now, and probably one that we can look at moving off in the near future. Brisbane and the Cats halfway through these games got Zorko, who scored the 127. You'd be really pleased with him if you brought him in. He's just got such a good role back there at the moment. And they actually didn't bring in the player I thought that would disrupt his role in a McKenna. So big watch there to see if he comes in this week, or he maybe just is not in the team. I don't know what to expect of that. I thought McKenna was sort of the guy that they relied on back there, but hasn't come back into the side straight away. So I haven't really heard any news about it, but that's good for the owners that have Zorko. Obviously, look, I was going to bring him in last week, but ended up going to a Flanders instead with the extra coin. Just with, the age profile and probably the longevity of a Flanders, it's a no-brainer to go there instead of a Zorko. But definitely, if I would respect going to a Zorko, because I would have loved to put him in as well. Kicked the 2 goals in that, so that was probably pretty fortunate. I know one was a 100-metre penalty and, pretty much just walked into it. So, yeah, pretty lucky there for owners. But, yeah, it's been great. Josh Dunkley put up a 90, so it was a bit of a disappointing one there, especially in an easier matchup, which has shown some really high ceiling scores for midfielders. Just, yeah, didn't get it done there. I know he was in a few captain choices. McCluddage, if you had him. It's just a really poor game overall from Brisbane Lions. Only scored the 37 points and just look like a shell of themselves at a Gabba at the moment. So probably just an anomaly, really. And Loman, if you picked him up last week, scored a 49, a respectable 49. So he's making some coin as well. The Cats. No one really fantasy relevant at the top there, unfortunately. Besides the Holmes, if you had him, he's still scoring quite well, averaging sort of that 90 zone. So you'd be happy to hold on to him. Dempsey only scored the 54, so his break-even's really creeping up on him now. Probably one I'm still looking to hold, just given the other priorities, but definitely looking probably to move him off next week for sure, unless he can pop a big score. Stewart, like I said, had that concussion, so he only scored the 47 and looks like a must trade, I think. I think he's out for 2 weeks, given the protocols. So, and he just didn't look great anyway. He's been pretty a poor performer as those defenders, and we've got so many guys that can just be flicked back there. So I definitely think he's a trade, and look to grab a big midfielder in my opinion. And Clark came on a sub, scored the 25, so. Definitely losing some coin, but yeah, at the end of the day, there's not one you can really jump up from him, so it's probably just a hold or try and trade him out if you can. West Coast was a surprising win here. Actually looked really good. I did watch this game, and they absolutely dominated Fremantle. Probably should have been a big margin in the end, with a bit of a late spurt from Fremantle, but. Yeah, it all was really in the hands of Harley Reid. Kicked 3 goals, 19 touches, 3 marks, 10 tackles. Scored the 80, so you would have been happy with that. Unfortunately, I didn't have him on field, just with it. I made a mistake there. I should have fielded him over McKercher, but it is what it is. At the end of the day, I thought this was a tougher matchup for him, and I didn't expect him to kick 3 goals. So if he didn't kick those 3 goals, you know that he was on track for a 50. So you win some, you lose some. Really just needs to show a more fantasy relevant, like marks and tackles. He needs to get some more of those to be fantasy relevant as such in terms of being a primo. But for this year, while he is a rookie, he is going great in making a lot of coins. So definitely one to hold on for a little while longer, and probably can be fieldable, I'd say. But definitely is a flag with just the 3 goals. But he looked great in this game and is only growing on his confidence. And Elliot Yeo scored another 88, so we'll be happy with him. Just had plenty of touches, just didn't really do anything else, unfortunately, to help along with his score. So, but he's still moving in the right direction in terms of cash. He's actually, I think, top 5 defender at the moment. I should probably check this. I don't know how to check it on this app. On the website, is there a way? I do not know. Let's go stats. Let's have a look. Let's do a bit of a venture here. So let's go position, defenders. Let's go average. So yeah, so I got those 4 on average. So that Nick Martin's 3rd in averages, and then he's not too far behind the top 6. So he's definitely not one to move on just yet when he's averaging that close. He's definitely more of a luxury upgrade, or you wait until he has an injury. So even a Max Holmes right there, so and a Jordan Clark. So both of those have been really good picks. Same with the Elliot Yeo, Nick Martin, Hayden Young. Obviously, there's been a lot of good picks really here. Let's move back onto this. So that was all really from West Coast. Not really too many other fantasy-friendly people. Besides maybe keeping an eye on Dom Sheed. If you're looking to go back there, he only had scored the 2 after being the sub and is going to drop massively in price. And maybe one to pick up cheap later on along the line. But I don't know if we go back there after last year. Move on to Fremantle. Sarong scraped to a 107, topping out in the score for them. if you captained him, you'd be happy with 107, but overall, he had a massive break even. So losing cash was pretty even along the in the stats overall. 6 marks, 6 tackles, you'd be happy with that. But yeah, just wasn't able to be consistent. I think he had a pretty slow start. Jordan Clark is just a definition of consistency, scoring that 96. I think that's pretty much his average at this point. Just doesn't know how to get that ton, unfortunately. We saw the return of Sean Darcy, scored the 94. He just doesn't know any other way but to score big. And he's just a big barometer in there, isn't there? He just looks massive and has really some big implications for Jackson. Scored to 61, break even to 107, so he's dropping coin really quickly. Luckily, kicked 2 goals. It's hard to sort of really say what to do with him because he still had a lot of ruck contests, but I think he has to go, unfortunately. And it's like what I said last week, you got to expect these sort of games with Sean Darcy coming back because we've seen it so many times. Hopefully your major trades jump off him to get sort of that top primo or get a midfielder. But I think he is one that definitely has to go because he's definitely going to play next week. But there's no way he's going to meet his break even of like 130, 140, whatever it is. So, yeah, definitely losing a lot of coin. Brayshaw, if you had him, he just doesn't look great. Like I've said, to the eye, he doesn't look like the Brayshaw of old, unfortunately. Did he have many CBAs? I'd say he would have. Especially with Hayden Young being out of that side for majority of that last quarter, that would have jumped up quite a lot. So, but yeah, if you had him, would I be jumping off? Probably not yet. I think again you've got he's putting up decent enough scores that you can move off rookies first and get those upgrades because every other day, he could just pop a 130 as we've seen in the past couple of weeks. And then jump up his break even again. So, yeah. Nat Fife showed why we hold him. 82, sorry. Really happy with that. 27 touches. Again, just needs to learn to mark and learn to tackle a little bit more. But he's got those guys around him to do that. So he's got his cash moving in the right direction. I think now his break even's in the 50s. So he's probably one to hold a little bit longer. If you had him still, I'm looking to still hold him just for other priorities. But you could move off of him if you want to, if it gets you up to that person. Sharp did really well. He's been one of the good cash generations of this year. Ryan had a pretty poor game, and we talked about Luke Jackson. Wouldn't be moving off Ryan either, for those that are asking the question. It was just a poor game for them, and then Freo entirely, so expect him to jump back up, and he's going to put some big scores on the top of your head pretty quickly. Moving into the final 2 games, so we've got Sydney and the Suns. Couple fantasy relevant people here. So Grundy, we saw go massive and score the 142 in his 200th game. So he loves those milestone games, I reckon. He just goes big. We saw it against Gorn earlier this season where he went 120-ish. So he just loves when he's sort of in the spotlight. So, but he's making some good coin for you now. He would have jumped up a fair bit in price. And probably looks like a hold, unfortunately, for a lot of people. That probably look to move him on, but look, it saves you a trade at the end of the day. Hopefully he can be a bit more consistent for you and, yeah, be that top-line guy that we all know he can be. Unfortunately, I did trade him out a couple weeks ago, but we all know this is what he could possibly do, and that was the whole main reason of why I stuck with him for so long, but just to the eye, he didn't look good, but coming off the bye, he looked really great. Heaney, again, solid as a rock, 113. You're happy with that? Definitely should have been in some captain considerations. Golden saved it late, scored the flat ton. I think he was on like 33 at half time, so had a massive last quarter, and we just know what he can do. He just outruns everybody, so he can be a bit of a frustrating watch where, he's not scoring quite well in the first half, but then just goes massive in the second half when everyone's sort of running out of steam, and he just keeps trucking along. He has a massive 97% time on ground, which is just ridiculous, so it's nice not to see him on the bench at all. And definitely one to target coming pretty shortly, I'd say. Roberts, probably the number one cash cow for the year, I would say. He's been absolutely enormous and keeps getting it done. And I've thrown Taylor Adams in the watch list because, like I said last week, I think he is ripe for the picking and is definitely in my considerations this week, even going on with the risk. I know he only had the 67% time on ground, but that's slowly increasing as he gets more and more match fit. He just has such a fantasy relevant game where he can have plenty of touches and also gets plenty of marks and plenty of tackles. So, what was his CBA usage? I don't think it was super high, but it is slowly creeping up as sort of what we expected. So yeah, 41%. You'd expect that to sort of jump up a little bit more and more as he gets more match fit. So yeah, he's definitely one that I'm definitely keeping a big eye on. If I don't pick him up this week, then definitely in the coming weeks. You'd think the only flag with that I'll say is that we have a lot of that sort of round buy in there already, as we've got Heaney. Let's just have a quick look at buys. Already have Heaney, already have Flanders. So if we're bringing in, hold on. We already have Heaney, we already have Tom Power, and we have Fisher. So whether you think Fisher's sort of going to stick around for that long, I probably don't think so, unless we'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, bringing in a round 12 buy player could be really harmful to our buy structure. But maybe DPP saves us a little bit where we're able to throw people back and forth into the midfield. That's probably the only benefit because we can sort of move these guys around a lot more. That's all I really want to talk about with that one. Move on to Flanders. He looked great. Really happy with that. I brought him in this week, making some good coin. Probably butchered the ball a little bit more than what I would like, and I am concerned that he will too lose a role as that halfback. But look, I think they've committed to him now, so hopefully he can improve. And he did a few nice things, just probably not as consistent as you would like. But at the end of the day, the Suns were pretty much smashed back there, so wasn't a huge amount they could do. Took Miller was high on my trading target this week. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to have the coin to get him. I like his run. I definitely highly recommend picking him up this week. Had a 23 game, 23 disposals, 3 marks, and 7 tackles. So pretty nice in the grand scheme of things. Get the goals well. I think he's ready to go big again. Just needs a bit more friendly matchups. Obviously, this was a tough matchup. So to get 100, you'd be happy with that. Lukosius put an 80 on whoever picked him up. I'd be pretty happy with that. His roll looks really good. Took plenty of intercept possession, so you'd be pretty happy. Just probably needs to get a few more of those chip balls around, but that's what Flanders is there for, unfortunately. But definitely probably still one you could pick up if you want to. I think he's around 650 now, so but his role was definitely there, and he's going to make some decent coin. Closey really killed it again, making some major coin. Anyone that didn't pick him up, probably this is the last week. He's still under 400k. Still has a massive negative 15 break even. So if you don't have him, pick him up. Noah Anderson had a really poor game from what we sort of what we saw last week. I don't know if he really copped attention or anything. It's just sort of wasn't really his day. And this is what we sort of can flag from him. He just really has those. He's really inconsistent where he can have those big breakout games, but can also be, have these 70s or I didn't think a 70 was sort of his floor, but I would have thought, I was hoping it was sort of around that 80 to 90. So really disappointing for anyone that brought him in this week. Wouldn't be looking to move him on. As I said, has a great run, so he's probably going to put a big score on your head pretty quickly. And Graham did the job at the end of the day, had a negative 29 break even and scored a 50, so you'd be happy with that. Again, if you don't have him, probably one to trade in as well. I think he has a pretty big negative break even. A negative 1 break even. I did see that earlier. Moving into the last game here. So a lot of fantasy relevant people pretty much highlight the entire bloody North Melbourne side at this point. So Cherry absolutely killed it again. He has been the sole destroyer of my season so far this season. Not picking him up is such a bad pick. He has been far better than what I sort of expected. and I honestly thought he'd be injured by now, but he is looking solid as a rock, and he just loves to cuddle anything and everything in his arms reach, which are pretty long arms. So, um, yeah, he's making some massive coin, and he's one of the big reasons why I'm sort of one step behind at the moment, because I did trade out a Grundy, so I'm one trade behind pretty much everyone else, unfortunately. Whereas I wanted to be one step ahead, but live and learn. It's too late to pick him up now. Can't reset the season, but yeah, you're still looking to hold on to Cherry. I think could be even a hold for the year if he can keep getting these sort of 100 to 110, and has shown a ceiling of that 120 area. So definitely wouldn't be looking at trading him at any point in time at the moment. Spoke about Shees already. Got to 106 where he copped a bit of attention, but you're happy with that. If you don't have him, probably it's so hard because he's so bloody expensive. What is he priced at? Oh, Jesus, that is massive, but he's worth it. He's honestly worth it. Big game, probably good game. The only flag I do want to say about Sheasel is that there's been a lot of talk about him being thrown into the midfield and also being a sort of a half forward as well. So with that flag coming through, obviously we heard Clarko say that in the press conference. Sorry, I need another drink. So Clarko said that in the press conference that they were sort of hoping he can consolidate his half-back role and then slowly transition him into sort of a midfielder into it, and then a half forward as well. So, but they're looking at fast-tracking that now, so that's a bit of a flag for owners that have him and for people that don't have him. So it's probably like if you don't have him, don't look to trade him in. If you have him, then you sort of just wait and see and wait for the ticking time bomb from where he does get thrown forward and drops a bloody 30 on her head somehow. If he can move into the midfield, I'd be happy with that because I still think he can score quite well in the midfield. Probably not 120s, but maybe closer to 100 or if not 105, just because he is that main sort of guy that loves to get the ball in his hands, and I think he'll still do quite well in there. Just if he gets thrown forward a little bit, that's a massive concern. So wouldn't be looking to trade him in, but wouldn't be looking to trade him out either. Powell did okay, scored the 82, sorry, did quite well. Got there quite late because I think he was on for a pretty low one, but got there in the end. You'd be happy with that. Luke Davies-Uniacke just doesn't look like the guy this year. This was a good matchup for him. He should have gone big, just didn't get it done. Doesn't look like he's going to be that super fantasy relevant guy. This is probably the last week I mentioned him, unfortunately, unless he turns it around. McKercher scored the 64, which owners would be pretty happy with, considering they had to hold him, like myself. Really pleased he got to that. I was actually quite concerned he was going to be the sub for this game, given the injury concern he had last week. But yeah, the only real concern really was his role. He started a lot forward, unfortunately. Sort of like a half forward, didn't really have a lot of time back, and barely had any time in the midfield, so 10%. That's literally nothing. So, it's a tricky one. It's definitely a tricky one. Do I look to trade him out? He's definitely in my trade plans this week, just with a few. I think he is one that could go. Still has a pretty high break even. I have traded him out already. We'll get into that after. But, Fisher was another disappointing one, 60, and what was a good matchup. It's just his teammate burns him all the time. He's in space. He could be easily getting chip marks. He's just not giving the ball. Again, with the Sheasel concern with him going forward, that could lead a lot of points to Fisher getting more points. So, again, this really has a lot of implications to people that have both of these. It could just be, okay, hold and wait and see for both of these guys, because at the end of the day, you don't want to be trading out a Fisher, then a Sheasel gets thrown in midfield, and then that opens up a bunch of points to Fisher, and then you're having to sort of get Fisher back in, and then you're trading out a Sheasel. So it's I'm looking to hold both. Luckily, I have a few other concerns that I don't really have to make this decision too much. At the end of the day, Fisher didn't lose a huge amount of coin, and hopefully he can have a bit of a bounce back next week and score back to his 80s and stop that cash rot. The two rookies that a lot of people traded in last week with the big massive break-evens did quite poorly with mid-40s, so would have made some coin, but has definitely stopped a lot of that cash generation this week. But probably could be looked at this week if you are still looking for a bit of a downgrade option. I think the only problem with that, I think they're both in the 300k range now, unfortunately. Combin scored 35, so that's really disappointing and stopped all his cash generation for those that brought him in a couple of weeks ago. The only problem he really had was that he did start well in the halfback in the first half, but then got thrown forward and pretty much didn't touch it from there. So you'd be hoping as an owner, if you're not going to trade him, that he gets switched back to the halfback. But yeah, have to wait and see. I would expect him to be thrown back because he was just shocking up forward. But at the end of the day, his cash generation is pretty much all dried up now, so it's pretty disappointing. Same with Lazaro coming in as a sub, only scoring the 35, so his cash generation is done. And same with a Dersma, only scoring the 22 and is going backwards now. Need to move those guys on. Moving on to Hawthorn, no one's super relevant here in my opinion. Newcomb eventually cracked the ton. If you're still holding him, congratulations, you got the first ton for the year. Wouldn't be looking to trade him in this week, just given all the concern around him. It wasn't a softer matchup for Hawthorn. Obviously North Melbourne are a really good matchup. So one to watch there who is cheap. Amon had a pretty poor game with an 84, but you'd probably be okay with that given how well he's been going in the last couple of weeks. Did kick 2 goals in that as well. Had a high marks, just no real disposals because it was a lot in their forward line, unfortunately. And finally, Dan Rosie got subbed off for 33. So luckily I moved him on there. And you've got to be looking to move him off this week because he is losing massive coin now. But that sort of does it for all the games this week. So let's quickly move on to, my early trade so far this week. So again, looking to do a bit of an upgrade downgrade this week. So moving on to Zach Williams, who obviously had that bit of a knock. His cash generation is done. High break even. So looking to move him on there, and moving on to McCurdy, who also has a pretty high break even though he has now has defender status. So looking to get in a Garcia, definitely for sure. He's definitely the one I want to grab there. And I had 780k to sort of play around with who I wanted here. At the moment, I've got Jack McRae in, sort of following the pack a little bit, being a bit safe there, but let's have a quick look. Okay, there we go. Sorry. Players I can afford. Why isn't it showing me? What's going on? Players I can afford. There we go. So obviously Jack McRae is there. I was looking at him. Could go Caldwell, but like I said, I don't think he's super long term. Whereas I think Jack McRae could push that sort of top 6 if given this consistent role. I've got a good dog. Degoe, there. Got a Windhager if I want a cheaper option. Make some good coin, but definitely won't be pushing those lines. There's a few more here that I want to talk about. Saligo, again, very similar to a Windhager. Very cheap. Got that roll. Could make some good coin. What am I going by? Going by last. Okay. Quite some big scores here. No one else really there. I don't even know where the rest of them are. Taylor Adams, like I said, I think I was pretty keen. My initial reaction was, okay, I don't have a huge amount of coin. Taylor Adams it is. I really like the look of him, and I think he can go big. I think he definitely has the ceiling of the guys here. It's just that injury concern, and he hasn't really shown himself to be that premium pick. Obviously, has Hawthorn this week, so that could be really good for him. But again, it could be one of those games where they're in the lead by 50 points at halftime. Okay, let's just sub some of our players out to keep them fresh. Taylor Adams, straight on the bench, you know. So he didn't get subbed out, which was good. Just, yeah, spent a bit of time on the bench, given he had that big corky. So, bit of a watch. I'll probably just go with a safer option in McRae for now. And I think that's about it. Lukosius as well, at a cheaper price at $6.50. I still like the look of him. He's making some good coin. It's just a flag of the upcoming matches in Darwin are the only concern, realistically. Where it could be quite slippery when it's not really conducive for his scoring, where he needs those intercepts. So, but yeah, I don't mind him. But that's where we're sort of looking at the moment. Definitely think it's going to be McRae at this point in time. Banks me a bit of coin for next week. And this is sort of how the team's sort of structuring at the moment. So it definitely looks a lot better in terms of best 22. I don't only have the 5 rookies on field now. So 1 in defence, 3 in the midfield, and 1 forward. Got Will Graham on the bench. Garcia there as well. So looking pretty healthy. Would like to get my cash generation up a little bit higher, given that I am probably a fair bit behind, given I didn't have Xeri and a few other. I've just been probably later on these guys than most people, so I've been spending up a little bit more. It's just really trying to get that one step ahead of the competition, which I don't feel like I have got at the moment. I feel like I'm sort of one behind, if not on par, because the way I like to look at it is in terms of looking at how many primos I have for the week. So, discounting here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Won't count Yo as a primo just yet. He's sort of that mid-price, so I don't expect to stay. Let's call them keepers rather than primos, I'd say. So I've got 4 keepers there, 5, 6, 7. We'll call Jack McRae 8 now after trades. Gawn, Grant, Marshall, what was that? 9 and 10. Heaney 11, Flanders 12, and Power probably 13. So 13 keepers overall in 22 is not too bad. With a few mid-prices in Yo, Bonner, Fisher, and Fife still remaining in the team. So not too bad. Maybe you guys can tell me how you guys are sort of structuring up this week, whether you're in the same sort of ballpark as me, where you have this amount of players that you expect to be keepers. Maybe I'm one step behind, but I feel like the team's in pretty good nick. I just haven't had those ceiling scores in the last couple of weeks, unfortunately, with the likes of Bont not really being active. Butters probably hasn't hit his absolute maximum yet. Merritt's been pretty quiet in his last 2. And everyone sort of has everyone else, unfortunately. The only real differences was the midfield, and they just haven't been getting it done, unfortunately. But I think that's all I'll really want to talk about for this week. It's been a bit of a longer episode, but hopefully you can still enjoy it. Just a reminder, I am now on Spotify as well, so if you don't want to watch my face, you can go onto Spotify and listen to me there. Hopefully I don't make your ears bleed too much. My voice can be the worst sometimes, especially after an hour and such talking. But I'll leave it there. Hopefully you guys had a good round. Hopefully you've increased your overall rank and are on the way up. And I'll talk to you pretty shortly. I am joining Bales on his live quick Q&A tomorrow night, so Tuesday night at 8:30, I believe. So if you've got any questions for me, you can go over there and ask there. If not, drop them in Twitter or even below this YouTube, in the YouTube comment section. I usually do respond to everyone there, as I'll try to anyway. But yep, we'll leave it there. Have a good night. I'll talk to you probably Tuesday night, given that we have a Wednesday night game, so a bit earlier this week. So ciao for now.